There's some official business that we are required to transact pursuant to the county attorney having to do with virtual meetings. So if you would forgive the scripted nature of what I'm required to read to you, there will be a few motions that will coincide with items, but I'm just going to read what the county attorney passed on, and then once we complete that required part of the project, we'll jump more formally into the agenda, if that sounds good. All right, so what I'm required to read to y'all is, here we go. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, this board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. As the script says, it's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of this board is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must first verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each board member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. So I will just go through the list of those serving on the work group, beginning with myself. My name is Scott Stroh, and I am joining the call from Mason Neck, Virginia. And working down the list, do we have Julie from Mount Vernon?
Yes, here. Julie Almacy, calling in from Mount Vernon, Virginia.
Thank you. Gretchen.
Hi, Gretchen Bolda, calling from Fairfax.
Patrick.
Hi, Patrick Winnick, calling from Fairfax.
Kenneth.
Can you repeat that, please?
Do we have Kenneth Saunders?
Ken, you're on mute.
Yes, this is Ken Saunders on the line.
Thank you very much, Ken. Great to have you. And how about George?
Hi, it's George Alber. I'm calling from Centerville, Virginia.
Cameron.
Yes, I'm here calling from Fort Belvedere.
Denise.
Yes, I'm here. I'm in Prince William.
And Mary.
Mary, you are mute. Try again.
Okay, Mary Lipsy from Springfield.
Thank you, Mary. Elizabeth.
Hi, this is Liz Maurer. I'm calling from Bellevue, Virginia.
And Laura.
Laura Wickstead, calling from North Springfield.
And obviously, I can't see you all, but I believe we have some members of Supervisor Stort's staff with us today. Christine, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Scott. I just wanted to quickly mention Kamala Spear is also here, Supervisor Stort's. She's our communications director here in the supervisor's office. He had a family emergency this week and is taking care of family business and was unable to be here. But I can tell you that this is an incredibly important event to him. And he has been talking about this for at least as long as I can remember. He has been looking forward to this event and brought forward a board matter at the Board of Supervisors to get things initiated on the county level to support this. And obviously being in the Mount Vernon district, we have a lot of wonderful historical assets and looking forward to the partnership with you all. So thank you for letting us sit in on this.
Thank you, Christine. And please also extend our thanks to the supervisor. We are most appreciative of his leadership in public service and all on his staff, and really honored that he put this board matter forward. And we know his excitement about this effort, and we know if he could, he would be with us, and we're certainly thinking about him and his family. So please pass that along as well, and thanks again for joining us. Let's see. So at this point, it sounds as though we all can hear each other, so I move that each board member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the board. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Second, just got a little bit more here, not too much more. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures which require the physical assembly of this board and the physical presence of the public cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that this board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated phone line, and that the public may access this meeting by calling 1-415-655-0001 with access code 179-549-7547. It is so moved. And finally, it is next required that all the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the state of the emergency itself, are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this board's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved. Are there any dissenting opinions? Hearing none, I think we have dispensed with the official business that we're supposed to begin at the start of each of these meetings. Denise, did I cover everything the county attorney wants us to cover?
You did. Thank you, Scott.
All right, and maybe there's a way I can paraphrase that for future meetings, but I will defer to those with greater expertise in such matters than myself for a determination about that. And thank you for your patience as we navigated through that important requirement, which I think we all appreciate as well, given the circumstances. Christine, thank you for your comments when you were introduced. Was there anything else that you or others on the supervisor staff wanted to say, or are you comfortable just jumping right in?
No, at this point, I think Supervisor Stork will probably join in another meeting. So I'd say go ahead and jump right in. Thank you.
All righty, excellent. So what I wanted to do by way of just beginning the meeting today was just briefly take a minute and sort of state the purpose for what I'm hoping we are able to accomplish today in a general sense. And obviously this is our first gathering, and most of what we will talk about today is somewhat preliminary and introductory. But a core purpose of, or two core purposes of today's meeting will be, after we just review our charge, will really be to discuss what I understand to be a necessary budget submittal coming up here in the next few months. And Denise and Christine or others on the supervisor staff may ask for a little bit of assistance in clarifying timetables, but one core purpose will be for us to discuss that budget submittal. So we're on schedule with what the county is trying to do, and also to discuss, again, in a preliminary fashion, the structure, process, and time frame for preparing the report that we're required to submit to the board. I am not expecting us to obviously completely finish those discussions or those processes today, but the two key outcomes, the two key purposes that I'm envisioning for us to focus on today are those two key points. And I also like to begin meetings such as this with just a brief overview of what I hope will be some shared values and some shared commitments for all of us as we participate in this work. And one is, I really want you all to feel comfortable and welcome to fully participate. We are all honored and privileged to be part of this group, and we're all bringing a a tremendous diversity of experience, expertise, and perspective, and it's incredibly important to me, as I know it is to the supervisor and all of you, that all feel comfortable and welcome to participate fully and to be able to do so in an open and honest and respectful way. And then also, we will have some work that we will need to do between now and when we submit our report to the board in July. So I think it's important for all of us to make the commitment now to taking responsibility for not only participating in these meetings, but I do anticipate there being next steps and some homework as we work forward to comply with our charge from the county. And of course, we'll do so in a collaborative way, and I don't anticipate any of it being overly burdensome. But I do like just to state at the beginning, these sort of what I would refer to as sort of fundamental commitments and ground rules for our meetings are all comfortable with those basic understandings. Hearing no dissent, I wanted to really just take a minute, as I've just alluded to, and just review and remind the group what the purpose of our work group is, and again, with appreciation and thanks to the supervisor for establishing this group. And really our primary charge as a work group is to provide recommendations by July of this year to the board for a preferred approach for organizing and leading county-related efforts for the inclusive observation and celebration of the commemoration in 2026. Specifically, what we have been charged to do within the recommendations that we submit is to include high-level SMART goals related to planning, promotion, types of civic, cultural, historical, and educational activities, ways, means, timetables, approaches, and accountability. So really what we will be focusing our work on between, or really in the next 6 months or so, will be to the work necessary to compile those recommendations and create that report. Do any of y'all have questions about that charge and that purpose? I apologize again for not being able to see you all, so if you do want to interject or raise a question or have a comment, since I can't see you, Denise, I might ask for your assistance in helping to facilitate that, but I'm not hearing anything specific to our charge, so we will jump in, and I did want to just take another relatively brief minute and just update you on the status of the work that is being conducted at the Commonwealth level. And I think, as you all are aware, the Commonwealth convened the American Revolution 250th Commission and appointed members this past fall. Gunston Hall, along with Jamestown Yorktown Foundation and the Virginia Museum of History and Culture in Richmond, are three of the lead organizational partners on that Commonwealth Commission. And our own Gretchen Bulova is also one of the governor's appointees to that commission. We have had 3 meetings, and the primary outcome of our work so far was to comply with a statutory requirement very similar to what the supervisor has set forth for us at the county level, to submit a work plan to the governor and the General Assembly that provides a preliminary structure, a preliminary path forward, as well as a budget request and some preliminary articulation of core themes to guide the commemoration to both the governor and the General Assembly. That was submitted by the deadline of December 31st and is presently being reviewed by the governor's office and the General Assembly. And I am very pleased to report that at present, the governor included approximately $250,000 in his proposed budget as seed money to get the Commonwealth Commission up and running and to support the Commonwealth Commission's ability to begin to move forward more formally in doing its work. That Commonwealth Commission at present is focusing on fleshing out some core themes. They've had discussion about timetable, which I will report on in greater detail in just a minute. And then the General Assembly will be taking up consideration of members to appoint to also serve on that commission. And then at some point between now and April, there will also be an advisory council comprised of citizens of the Commonwealth with expertise and perspective of benefit to the work of the commission that will be established. So this is intended to be a very inclusive and collaborative process at the Commonwealth level. And we are off to an early but to a good start. And two things I just wanted to share more specifically, and I'll also let Gretchen, if she has any comment to make as well. The two things that we discussed in greater detail at our meeting in January, both of which are specific to our work, which is why I wanted to begin with some of this contextual overview. And ordinarily, I will not talk this much. I want everybody to be able to fully participate, as noted earlier, but just as some contextual background. Two things we did talk about at the last meeting, the report having been submitted, were specific to the timetable for the commemoration. And just so y'all are clear about the Commonwealth Commission and the statute and the work at the Commonwealth level, we are really envisioning the work being focused, or I should say the activity and the events and the commemoration itself being focused on the 2025 to 2026 timeframe. So historically, obviously, 1775 to 1776. And there's a couple of important reasons for that. And while we all recognize the revolutionary period is much broader than any 2 years, one important reason for that specific time frame is because it mirrors what is being planned at the federal level, and it mirrors what is being planned in other states that have similar statewide commissions. That's not to say there won't be events or activities in Virginia that are pre-2025 or post-2026, but for the purposes of the Commonwealth Commission, we've really made a strategic and intentional decision to focus the bulk of the activities and events on 2026, with obviously some preliminary stuff in 2025. And then the year 2027 would be when we complete all of the reports and final accounting for that event, and the Commonwealth Commission's statute sunsets at the end of 2027. So let me pause there and just see if there are any questions about time frame that the Commonwealth Commission will be focusing on. And again, Denise, if you don't mind helping to facilitate, since I can't see, I'll be most appreciative. Any questions about time frame? All right. And then Denise, if you don't mind sharing the screen with the draft themes that I sent out to you earlier, that would be fabulous.
Yes, I have them on the screen while you were talking because I thought you were going to be speaking to them, but I'll put them up now.
So I want to stress that the key themes that have been identified by the Commonwealth Commission have been discussed only briefly by the Commonwealth Commission itself, but it's important to note that for about the past 2.5 years, there has been an ad hoc group of individuals representing museums, cultural organizations, national parks, Virginia Tourism Corporation, tribal communities, and other constituencies that began having conversation about what would be possible in association with this commemoration. And that ad hoc group came up with some draft core themes, which were the foundation of the document that is before you now, that has been revised and updated by the Commonwealth Commission itself. And I want to stress secondarily that the Commonwealth Commission fully recognizes that these themes likely will continue to evolve and change right up on through the commemoration itself. So please bear in mind that these are very, very preliminary, but I do think they're important both in substance and in context. And I just wanted to take a brief minute. I'm not going to read this to you. We can send this out to y'all subsequently. But I did want you to get a sense of the key themes that the Commonwealth was considering of relevance to the overall commemoration at the Commonwealth level. And what you see here, starting at the top, number one is that the American Revolution was a radical time with passionate activists someone encouraged to challenge centuries of an established world order, and that they led a revolution that would change the world. The second one is one that I think is particularly important and meaningful to our work, and that is really that the revolutionary movement, the American Revolution, was much more than a war. It was about ideas. And I can tell you that the work of the Commonwealth Commission is supremely and comprehensively committed to that concept and the notion of this commemoration being about ideas, and equally important, as you see reflected in some of the other key themes, that while these ideas were revolutionary in the 18th century, they continue to be revolutionary and relevant today, and that the commemoration of these ideas is also and equally a commemoration of the continuing fulfillment of the promises made in 1776 and the ongoing arc of justice beyond what happened in 1776. So what I want to stress is that much of what the Commonwealth Commission and other states will be focusing on will be this notion of being idea-focused and this concept of stressing the importance of this journey not being complete and being a journey towards equality, justice, liberty, and freedom that has continued since 1776 and continues right up to today and beyond. So there's a very strategic and intentional commitment to incorporating that reality into this work. And you see that in other aspects of the themes that are listed here. And then as you work a little bit further down, obviously an important part of what the Commonwealth Commission is trying to do and will be stressing is the importance and the prominence of Virginia in this story. And obviously, this effort is not just about education. This effort is also about marketing and promotion and generating tourism and economic development. So obviously, placing Virginia at the center has value educationally and historically, but also is something that allows Virginia to drive some economic and some other benefit out of this incredibly important opportunity. And I think that's certainly true as we contemplate our work at the county level as well. And obviously, Fairfax County is at the center of Virginia's history when you think about the sites and the history and the experiences, not just in the Revolutionary period, but when we think about women's suffrage and other aspects associated with civil rights in the county. And that's one reason why we are so pleased and honored to have folks from the county that are involved with One Fairfax and other efforts that the county is putting forth more broadly associated with rights and justice. So I will pause there. Again, this is just a very, very quick overview of what the Commonwealth Commission has been thinking and talking about up to this point. But let me pause there and first, Gretchen, there is no expectation or requirement, but since you are also on the Commonwealth Commission, if you are interested, please feel free to make any comment or add or expand on anything I just shared about the work of the Commonwealth Commission.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I think you definitely covered it. And if you take away two things from what Scott said, the commemoration years, so 2025 and 26, that's like the question I think people mostly have. And then those pillars are still a work in progress. And the next meeting is in March, right?
I think we have one in February.
And so hopefully they'll be wrapped up by then, because that's really going to be the foundation of our work. So, but anyway, you did a great job of laying it out. That was a lot, very comprehensive. Good job.
Thank you. And I will just add to that. I am two of the learning opportunities that the Commonwealth Commission has or will soon be participating in include the Virginia Tourism Corporation was kind enough to fund some consultant, the hire of a consultant to help do some research and analysis broadly in Virginia and across the United States about what the public and what the traveling public are interested in when it comes to the commemoration. And at one of our very first meeting at the Commonwealth level, in fact, that consultant shared the findings of that work, and they were incredibly insightful. And I am hopeful that even if the consultant can't join one of our meetings, that perhaps with Gretchen's assistance, not putting you on the spot again, Gretchen, but perhaps she and I or one of us can in some way provide a high-level overview to all of you on the county work group of those findings as well, because I think they're incredibly informative and beneficial as we think about what opportunities exist for us in Fairfax, but also I think at our meeting in February, and maybe it's the meeting in March, we'll be hearing from another group of consultants that the Virginia Tourism Corporation hired to specifically understand and evaluate and gain insight from African-American travelers and African-American citizens in Virginia. So there was this larger evaluation done more broadly of the public, and then there was this subset that focused on African-American citizens in Virginia, as well as African-American tourists and travelers. And we have not yet been given that presentation, but I do hope as well that some of what is presented at the Commonwealth level, we can then present at the county level, so you all benefit from some of that insight and expertise. But let me again stop there and open the floor for any additional questions or comments about any of what's been shared so far.
I do not see anybody chiming in, Scott.
Okay, well, then let's take a minute, and Denise or Christine would welcome your insight, but I think it would be, from my conversations with Denise, I understand that there is an opportunity to submit some form of request for some preliminary funding in support of the work at the county level to begin the process of planning for this commemoration. And forgive me for not fully understanding the process, but Denise or Christine, if you're comfortable, would you mind just sharing a little bit with the group about what we can do to help or what is expected of us specific to a budget request?
Denise, do you want to take that one?
Well, I can speak broadly to it, but we were interested in what the supervisor, in getting some direction from the supervisor and how he would like to handle it. There can be a budget request, and that would need to be going soon. I think March would be the time that it would be introduced. And whether we wanted to look at the project as a whole and funding it as a whole, or whether we would like to maybe, as I understand the Commonwealth has done, ask for some seed money to just kind of get us started, looking ahead for the larger funding in later years. And I think that was a conversation that we were wanted to have with the supervisor, but of course I understand that he has some family emergencies that we have not, so we have not been able to have that conversation yet. But in any case, we would need to make, if we were going to make a budget submission, it would need to be soon. We would be looking in the next month or so, I believe.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that, Denise and Scott, is trying to determine, I know you were looking at whether or not we should ask for the entire amount for the whole process, or just, I guess, kind of kickoff money or seed money for the project. Not knowing what all those parameters are and what may or may not be required, I would maybe recommend that we look at seed money and then start planning out what it is that we will need. that might be more palatable, especially given our current budget and COVID and everything else that's going on. So we can certainly continue to have those conversations with Supervisor Stork when he returns, and also with Joe Mondoro to figure that out.
Thank you.
Denise?
Mr.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
George?
Yeah, I do have a question. Are we talking about a budget for our work or the budget for the commemoration?
My understanding is, that we were thinking about the possibility of something that would allow preliminary implementation of the recommendations we proposed to the board by July, being pursued before the next budget cycle, if appropriate. And admittedly, this is something that is, well, let me rephrase that. I think that the only, I think it's fair to say that it might be a little bit difficult to come up with a budget submittal before we have put forth our recommendations, but I think there was also recognition of the timing being such that if we wanted to have any preliminary seed money, and I agree with what Christine has said, that seed money would seem to be the most logical course of action if we chose to make any request at all, sooner rather than later, so we're not losing another year or more before any work can begin. But that's obviously a question to all of you on the work group. Do we think there would be value and benefit in even putting together some sort of a preliminary request for seed money now, or are we comfortable, waiting until this time next year, knowing that extends the period of time before any of the recommendations or any of the work actually planning, promoting, and preparing for the commemoration could begin?
Scott, it's Gretchen. I just want to toss out, while we're thinking about budget requests for FY22, commemoration for Fairfax County, we're also able to ask for funds, and you have to help me with the term. Don't spend all of your money. So you can request carryover funds. Anyone can hear.
Yeah. Gretchen, you might want to try turning off your camera just to get a little bit more bandwidth, and then prioritize the voice over the video, and maybe try again.
Can you hear me okay, Denise?
Yes, you're much better now. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. I'm just going to start at the beginning. Another source of potential funding we have used for past commemorations was a carryover request that's usually made in September. So that's another funding mechanism if we're not ready quite yet. And so Denise and Kamala, maybe you have more experience with that than the rest of us, but that is a source. I just tossed that out there.
It is. That is a possibility. Again, we would need to coordinate that with the supervisor's office if that was something that they thought was a possibility as well. But you're right, there is an opportunity in the fall to ask for that carryover funding.
That is certainly a great point and good to know for all of our perspectives, because I admit to personally feeling a little not quite as prepared as I would like to submit a budget request now when we're so early in our work, and really we're just getting started. But I also wanted to not miss out on an opportunity that may be available now as well. Other thoughts or perspectives on that point?
This is Laura Wickstead. Let me start my video. Do you see me, Denise? Am I good here? Okay.
Yes.
Just some thoughts. I'm with the Virginia Rooms, Fairfax County Public Library. And of course, we were actively involved in the county's celebration a couple of years ago in 2017. When we reached out, let me focus here. So are we hiring staff to assist in the planning and the thinking and the coming up with programming? Or are we all reaching out to community groups like us and others as we did in the county's anniversary commemoration? Is it a blend of those two? Who's producing this? I assume all of us are.
Well, I think you raised some good questions, Laura, and I don't know if we've obviously progressed far enough in our work to know all of the answers or specific answers to those questions. I think certainly philosophically, I'm envisioning this, but welcome all of your thoughts as being a really broad community-based commemoration, as others have been, and as what is being planned at the Commonwealth level. Obviously, there will be some specific things that we will look and want the county specifically to do, but we're looking at this, certainly I'm looking at this as something that will be also organic and at the grassroots level, and in many ways what we potentially can do at the county level is both facilitate and support and promote what other organizations and entities will be doing or hoping to do more broadly in the county. But I do think there's value in contemplating some sort of signature event or activities that would be led by the county as well. What that looks like, what it costs, what is necessary to make that happen, I don't think any of us have answered those questions yet, but you raised very good questions that we'll need to consider as we prepare this report to the board. Well, let me just ask this question then, and perhaps Christine, you and I can talk separately, but, and I'm not asking you to say anything with 100% certainty, but do you think there would be an interest on the part of the supervisor that we present something as part of the request cycle now, or do you think we are okay from your perspective thinking more about a request at the carryover period of time in the fall? I want to make sure we're doing what the supervisor would like us to do, and if we want to do something now, we can move in that direction, but if we're okay waiting until the fall, then that gives us clarity around what we should focus on.
So I would think, as far as process, having the group meet, discuss what it is we're going to be looking for, kind of defining what the scope is, and then having something to request, with information and data to that would probably be more palatable, as far as taking something to the board for a request. So I don't know that there's a critical need right now. I'm not really sensing that there is one, especially since we're just kind of getting this kicked off.
Okay.
Unless you and folks in the group have specific things that you're thinking about or considering, that makes sense. But I think either way is fine, but I would probably suggest waiting.
No, thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think to the point of having something specifically to ask for, there's certainly great logic and strategy in that as well, which is one reason why we wanted to have this discussion now. So I will put it forth to the group, hearing the conversation and hearing Christine's perspective. Is there general consensus around focusing our work now on the recommendations and the report, and then transitioning to a budget request in the fall? And if you have a question or an opinion other than that, speak now. If not, we'll assume that there is consensus amongst everybody that we'll focus on budget in the summer in anticipation of a fall request.
Well, Scott, this is Gretchen. I'm not sure I would quite eliminate the idea of a budget request now if we have time, like we actually had a deadline that the request had to go in. Because if we can figure out the structure, come up with the mission and then our high level, what we'd like to achieve, with a couple things every year or just focusing on 24, 25, if we can kind of outline that, we may have time to put in a request. So at least we get in something and we start drawing recognition.
No, those are great points too, Gretchen. Thank you. What do others think?
Like, Christine, what is the deadline for a budget request? Like, hard and fast, what would it be?
I'll have to check because they're just now going into budget season. So there's going to be some consideration items brought to the board on Tuesday that have been planned. And so I wouldn't want to spring that on this Tuesday. So I'll need to look at the calendar and figure out the timing of it, because you've got consideration items, you have carryover items. Carryover here has been handled very differently because of COVID. And so it hasn't been consistent. I have to check with the chairman's office and let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine. Other thoughts or perspectives around the question of budget and a budget submittal? I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to share their ideas or thoughts.
Mary, I believe you're muted. Mary. Okay, I'm going to try to unmute.
There, am I?
There.
Okay. I'm a retired educator, and I just think that possibly we could consider funding just to start publicizing this in some way, besides press releases, to get out to educators, et cetera, and community that this is happening and that there will be a celebration. So that could be a low-level cost in my mind, but just to spread the word.
Thank you, Mary. Patrick, again, not to put you on the spot, but you're our representative from Visit Fairfax and have a great deal of insight and expertise in this particular topic. What are your thoughts, my friend, about the value of trying to make a request now that could be used to in some way support some focused public relations activities?
I think any kind of budget request, and going back to a point that you made earlier, has to go around some kind of plan. So I truly believe, like, the sooner that we can get in there with a reasonable request, the better. And perhaps what it might look like over the next 3 or 4 years, having gone through this with the Civil War anniversary and the 275th anniversary, it seemed at the time, I believe the county executive was Mr. Long, and I know he appreciated us kind of giving him a heads up about what would be coming down the pike. But to Mary's point, the sooner that we can start getting the word out there, the better. The schools is an important avenue, I think, not only to reach the youth, but also their parents. So working closely with FCPS would probably be to our benefit. Just in public schools, I mean, there's private schools as well. But early promotion and publicity is already good. We would just have to figure out internally what kind of avenues that we wanted to utilize to get the word out, and then just go from there, figure out how much it costs. However, to Christine's, point, I don't know the inner workings of, carryover budget and all that fun stuff. So the last thing that we would want to do is, push our luck at the front end of this whole thing. So I think if we can graciously find out what would work best for the county executives and everybody else, I think the better off that we would be. I know it's kind of a long answer, but early is better, but we just should do it right with a plan.
Thank you, Patrick. I think that makes a lot of sense, and we appreciate your insight on that. Any other thoughts from others on the call?
So Scott, this is Denise, and I have a rough timeline in my conversations with Joe Mondoro, who is the deputy county executive. And he suggested that if we wanted to put in a request, we would have a not in package item to the board in January. Given it's the 22nd, we're going to have to get that rushed through, but that would give them some information about what the work group had planned and what we were thinking. And I think advertising the events or advertising the fact that we are planning for this event would probably be enough. But then a third quarter budget request would go in on March 9th for approval for the budget on April 27th. And that would also mean that there would be a board matter sometime in February from Supervisor Stork if he was willing to support that.
So what I'm hearing is, I'm not sure I understand what we have to submit in January, but a board matter in February to support a potential budget request by March 9th is what I'm gleaning most specifically. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. The item that would be due in January, the non-package, is just an update from the work group.
Okay.
Christine, does that sound about right for the timing?
If that's what Joe's saying, then yes, absolutely. The board meets in February on, it looks like February 9th and February 23rd. And then not again until March 9th. So that would follow the usual pattern of what they look at. They start going into budget in April. But I think too, it depends on the amount, of what we're asking. And so, is it a few thousand? Is it tens of thousands? Is it hundreds of thousands? Because I think that might modify Joe's response.
Sure. I think we understand that. Absolutely. Well, it sounds to me just sort of characterizing the points that have been made so far, and certainly if others have perspectives, please feel free to share them. It sounds to me as though there is some interest and that there's a sense of there being some benefit and value in trying to make a modest request, a modest third quarter request in conjunction with the February and March meetings of the board that could perhaps provide some preliminary funding for marketing and advertising about the commemoration itself, and that it's around the corner and coming, and there's going to be great things going on, at least as a way of beginning to build public awareness of the work and of the opportunity. And if that's the case, I think that perhaps we don't have a lot of time, but we probably do have enough time to come up with some sort of a plan, to Patrick's point, that would support such a request. How do others feel about that? All right, so I will assume then that there is general support for that, at least trying to do so. And obviously, if we get a sense from the supervisor, the county executive, or the budget office that the timing of such a request would not make sense, then we will adjust and postpone. We want to make sure we're in very close alignment, of course, with the supervisor and the county. But Patrick, if I follow up with you separately, would you be willing to have some conversation and help at least with the planning for the plan?
Absolutely. However I can be of service, I'm here to help.
All right, well, thank you. Any other thoughts or perspectives about budget? All right.
I see nobody.
Okay, thank you. So then let's, and thank you for all your thoughts and ideas about that. That was helpful. Let's then transition into having, and really what I hope is just, you know, a high level, a bit of brainstorming about fulfilling our charge and what exactly we want to focus on and how we want to move forward with preparing the recommendations that need to be presented to the board by July. So as I read, we are charged with preparing recommendations by July 21 that should include a couple of key elements. One is the preferred approach for organizing and leading the effort. We need to include high-level SMART goals, and those goals need to relate to planning, promotion, types of activities, timetables, and then obviously there's an accountability piece. So I do not personally have any preconceived notions about how we should do this work or what would make the most sense from your all's perspective. So I really just want to open the floor. For those of you who have been involved with other commemorations at the county level, I know that's a number of you. I welcome your thoughts, but I want to take some time and just make sure we're on the same page and have at least a sense of how we want to move forward. Just as one example, do we want the entire work group to sort of participate in all aspects of this? Do we want to create, you know, a couple of smaller groups as part of the larger work group to focus on different things? Do we have good examples of how we want to package and present these recommendations? And again, this is just to get a sense of framing and shaping our work, and then obviously in future meetings we'll dig much more deeply into, you know, what are the goals, what is the preferred approach, what are the timetables. But any initial thoughts or ideas from you all about how we want to do this work moving forward?
Yeah, I have a couple, George, if I may. I've never, to be honest with you, I've never planned or participated in a commemoration on this scale, but it would seem to me that those themes, which I had not seen them in that detail before, it would seem to me that those themes are very important, that every event, every set of communications, everything we do, we ought to be absolutely 100% sure how it ties and interacts and supports one or more of those themes, first off. So you could, I think you could organize kind of around the themes. Now there may be overlap, and that would also tie into the, not the overlap, but the tying things to themes would tie back into the communications that Mary, I think it was Mary, I'm learning the names here, that Mary suggested. And so I think that would be a way to kind of think about and organizing both the commemoration itself at this early stage, both the, you know, the commemoration itself and the way we go about planning it. So that we don't, and even to organize our effort around the themes. Because at the end of the day, if those are the themes, we better be able to stand up and point out very clearly how this event or this communication program or this publication, whatever the vehicles are, tie into that theme and support it. maybe that's obvious to everybody, but it just struck me that it's kind of a one organizing principle we could latch on to. Having never planned one of these before, but I've, done many corporate type things where you want to communicate something, whether it be to customers or employees. And if you have these themes, everybody who touches this commemoration ought to know what those themes are and how the work that they're doing supports that theme from high to low, from the person who's just sweeping up the stuff to the person who's actually, writing a book about it or something to commemorate it. I don't know.
No, those are great points. Thank you. And I think that reflects what the Commonwealth Commission is doing as well by focusing very intentionally on the themes at the outset, so they are guiding principles and values. And I think certainly whatever we present to the board needs to be aligned with and reflect comprehensively those themes. So that's a great point. Thank you. Other thoughts?
Scott, will we be able to tag along with what's going on at the state level? Do they already have branding? Do they have a tagline? Do they, I don't remember how it was done for the counties or the Jamestown celebration, because, each area of the state kind of had their own thing, but it was tied back to that. So I assume that we would be doing the same thing. And I know, Gretchen, that, you were a part of that.
I can tell you that at this point, there's nothing that the Commonwealth has prepared in terms of logos or taglines. We've not really been meeting at the Commonwealth level as a formally appointed commission that much longer. We only had our first meeting in November. And I think from my understanding of what the governor included in his budget, there is funding to get a staff person that can help administer some of the logistics and other aspects of beginning to prepare to publicize and develop marketing materials and collaterals. Certainly the seed money at the Commonwealth level at this point is intended to be much more focused on promotion and public relations and getting word out than any events, obviously, but none of that exists yet. I think as far as the larger question of how it is layered, I do think what the Commonwealth Commission is thinking about is creating sort of a framework and an umbrella in coordination and under which counties, municipalities, and organizations can participate and be involved and align their activities and interests with what the Commonwealth is doing. I think what the Commonwealth is hoping to be able to do as it stands now is really to do a couple of things. One is to promote, two is to facilitate, and three is to support. And I think there will be an opportunity for the county, obviously, to benefit from that umbrella, if you will. And we can certainly reference that in the report, that will be one strategy or one aspect of the preferred approach for organizing and leading the county-related efforts will be to benefit from and leverage what the county is doing or what the Commonwealth is doing, but they don't have any of that formally in place yet.
Scott, Mary Lipsy has her hand up, and
Yeah,
Patrick Lennon had something to say as well.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mary.
Okay. Again, as an educator, I'm thinking about the bicentennial and my early years of teaching and how it came as a nationwide and statewide to us as teachers to concentrate on that. Of course, I was a history teacher, but the bicentennial minutes, I still remember on television where, every day we got a new bit of information. about our country's, celebration. I just know, again, as an educator, how difficult it is to get teachers to participate. And we noticed this when we were trying to celebrate the 275th. And so I'm stressing that from the Commonwealth, it should start on high and come down into the counties and city schools and private schools to say, we have this celebration. We really want, every student in school to be aware and to participate, et cetera. So that's just my 2 cents.
No, thank you, Mary. That's helpful. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I remember being in Philadelphia in 1976, and I remember many of those activities as a student that we all were engaged in. So, other sort of high-level thoughts about how we want to proceed with doing this work, or how we want to structure our work going forward?
Patrick, did you have something? And then Liz had her hand up as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, from experience, if with Virginia orchestrating and organizing the Jamestown commemoration, the Civil War anniversary commemoration, the World War II commemoration, typically how they operate is that they would create some kind of logo that they would expect people to utilize and kind of guard, and then endorse events that are taking place on a local level that tied in to the points that George touched on earlier, because they will be looking for events that support those main ideas. So maybe that's something that we can just keep an eye on a state level. And if you and Gretchen could maybe ask that question at the next meeting. And the second thing, and I think, Scott, you have brought this up, the words signature event like triggered all these memories in my head from these other commemoration that we've done on a county level. And it would be my recommendation that if that's the direction that we're going on a county level, we need to get someone involved immediately that has the expertise to put on events of that scale, because it is a beast. And I know everybody that did that alongside me remembers many sleepless nights and trying to figure out logistics and stuff like that. And as someone who's worked closely with the folks, specifically Ashley over at the Celebrate Fairfax, I mean, they do big signature events, kind of, that's their thing. And with the fair last year being canceled and probably this one being canceled, they're probably looking for something to focus and concentrate on. I do serve on their board of directors, so I know that they're actively seeking ways to partner with the county to help them when, these events right now can't be done. So that's just kind of my 2 cents with the logo, and the sooner we start thinking about the signature event, if that's what we want to do, it would just be helpful if we had somebody on the front end that could start planning for that kind of thing now.
Thank you, Patrick, and I think you make a great point, and I would certainly concur with signature event planning and expertise being necessary. I mean, I think as I envision our work now, between now and July, I think one of the critical questions will be, do we want to have a signature event, and how are we defining it, and then what's it going to cost, and what resources are necessary to do it. So I think that's a great example, Patrick, of the type of thing that we need to be thinking about in terms of a preferred approach, also in terms of the types of events and activities we would want, and then obviously the resources and the accountability piece. So thank you for that example and that insight. Was it Liz that had her hand up, Denise?
Yes.
So I'd like to build on what Patrick just said, and I think it would be very helpful sooner rather than later to create a calendar or a list, preferably a calendar, of things that entities and organizations are already planning to do. So we can see how they fit together and how they can support each other. And also, if the more advanced notice we have of another museum or organization's activities, the better we can plan to not be in conflict with them.
No, that's a great point as well. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to build on what Liz just said. In addition to simply not being in conflict with them, we could probably partner with them. And without stealing their thunder, because people don't like that either, without stealing their thunder, we could in some way or form incorporate it in to the county commemoration, if that's what we're calling it. And then we extend, the power and reach of this committee without getting them mad at us for co-opting their stuff.
Sure. No, I think that's a great point too. The partnership and collaboration, I think, certainly should be, and I think appropriately would be central to our preferred approach. So I think certainly in the report that we would submit to the board, it would seem wise and advisable to have a section that focuses on partnership and collaboration and how that's an important element of this effort.
Scott, Liz has a
I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. We got about another 15 minutes before we will conclude, and obviously I know this is a lot of things and a lot of stuff to think about in our first meeting right up front, but I appreciate everybody's insight. Other thoughts specific to the process or the structure of how we want to conduct our work going forward?
So Scott, this is Liz again, and we can circle just back around to what we were talking about. And I think if one of our goals by the midpoint of the summer could also be to be thinking about communication plans and channels, because I think it's communicating with the points that we're talking about with teachers and everybody else. But so if there's going to be a logo, is the state going to have, say, like dedicated social media? Is the county going to be doing something along those levels? Is there going to be some kind of we would be sending out communications through the county's communication channels? Like if there are events that are happening, like how is there going to be a website that is set up on the state level or on the county level, and who feeds into it? And that would be a cost. But I think in this budget plan is to be thinking about what are the communication goals and strategies and who's going to execute them, and where we get support from other parts of the state.
Sure, that's a great point as well. And what I would, certainly if there are other thoughts, but I'm taking some notes here, and a couple of things that I've jotted down that I would like to ask you all to think about between now and our next meeting. And certainly I welcome you all sending me your thoughts and ideas via email or giving me a phone call to talk about anything. And before we do conclude at 3, I want to make sure we have a very specific conversation about when we want to meet again and on what schedule we would like to meet again. But specific to what we've just discussed about structure, process, and time frame, the 3 things, actually it might be 4 things that I would like to ask you all to think about. And obviously, this is just preliminary today, but I'd like you to think about each of these things between now and when we meet again. And one, I think it'll be critical in the report that we present to the board to have a clear idea or articulation of our target audience. And that doesn't have to be just one demographic, but I'd like to ask you all to give some thought to who we really want to target in terms of our audience in this effort, and also sort of the hierarchy of that audience. is the priority, and I'm not saying this is my opinion or not, but, is the priority students? Is the priority tourists? I'm just pulling these off the top of my head, but I'd like to ask you all to give some thought to audience and the hierarchy of audience, because the one thing I do know that's important to the supervisor, and Christine, welcome your thoughts too, is are these high-level SMART goals, part of which is being able to identify in an intentional way who we're hoping to serve, and then being able to measure, once it's all said and done, how effectively we met the needs of that audience. I also would like to ask you to think more about the themes, to the point, and I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly who made the point about the themes earlier, but still getting used to voices. But think more about those themes. I think it will be important in the context of our work to reference in the report how we, just to use the term, how we can customize those themes in ways that are specific to Fairfax, and how we can also use those themes in ways that leverage what is uniquely Fairfax. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then I'd like you to think about, in a big picture sense, the strategy. And when I say strategy, I'm referring to, I think what I would say is that, what is in the official charge that the board adopted is it uses the term preferred approach. And I think that's a great term, and I would build on top of that term this concept of strategy. So I'd like you all to think about sort of the strategy, how we're going to prioritize or how we want to build into the effort things like the communications plan, the marketing plan. What are the high-level strategies that will be important for us to recommend to the board in terms of that preferred approach? How are we going to layer building partnerships with marketing and public relations, with activities and events, and give some thought, if you would, please, to how you think that should exist, how you think that should work, and what you think is most important. And then lastly, or not lastly, but second to last, I think it's not too early to begin to think about, to Patrick's point, activities, what exactly we would like to try to do. And that doesn't have to be just what the county does. It can include what do we want to see happen in the county, whether it's something the county does or something we partner with Mount Vernon or Gunston about, or something else we do with another organization. How do we want to, what activities do we really want to see? And then we can think about who is the best person to do that, or who are the best organizations to collaboratively do it. And then lastly, I think it's also important, independent of our budget discussion, to give some thought at this early stage to resources. And that's not just budget or fiscal resources. I think that's, again, to Patrick's point and other points, that's expertise, that's insight, that's perspective. What resources do we feel are important to recommend to the county so they have a sense of what will need to happen between now and when this really comes together in an engaging, impactful, and relevant way in 2025 and 2026. So part of the homework between now and when we meet again, just to briefly reiterate, please give some thought to audience, themes, strategy, activities, and resources. Questions about that? And again, we'll talk about it at the next meeting, but also feel free, if you don't want to sit on something till we meet again, to send it to me and I'll compile it. But that's one of the primary takeaways and homework assignments I would like your help with between now and when we meet again. And then to that point, when would you like to meet again? I certainly think with the amount of work we have to do, a monthly meeting is going to be important. There may be situations where we will want to meet more frequently, or smaller groups of us will want to meet more frequently. But one, are we comfortable with monthly meetings going forward? All right, I'm not hearing any dissent. Denise, is anybody raising their hand that would indicate anything other than comfort with that?
I got one thumbs up. Can I get some nods or something? Yeah, okay, couple yes. No, got it. See, I see. Yep.
So
General
the one thing I would ask is if we have to create something for the board for this month based on your text with Joe, that's,
I was just looking at that.
Right, I think we may need to convene some portion of us or all of us sooner if we need to do something for the budget. I think we'll do a little bit more thinking about what would make the most sense. In terms of a general meeting, it sounds as though we're comfortable with monthly, and then the question becomes, this is kind of a weird month because actually we have 5 Fridays in January this month. But are Fridays, generally speaking, at 1:30 good times for everybody? And I will work with Denise if Fridays at 1:30 work well to drill down on whether it's, you know, the 3rd or the 4th Friday, or what makes the most sense going forward. But is this day and time generally good?
I prefer it to be a little bit later if it was possible, because I'm often involved with the schools. I'm not available sometimes this early in the day. Today I happen to be. But
Okay, how much
something
later
after,
in the day would work for you?
more like 3 o'clock-ish.
How do others feel about 3 o'clock on Friday, or is that getting too late for some?
This is Laura Wickstead. I work every other Friday. I have an odd schedule. But I can work to try to attend meetings.
Okay. Well, Denise, if it's okay with you, it sounds as though Fridays later afternoon seem to work well for folks. Can we put together, or maybe you and I can talk early next week, and maybe we can put together just a short doodle poll or some sort of email communication just to zero in on what the Fridays are and what the actual time is, because I'd like to get all the meetings scheduled right up through at least May in the next week if we could. Can you give me a call, or can we touch base early next week about that?
Absolutely. I'll follow up with an email today.
Great, that's perfect. Thank you so much. All that said, any other questions or any other comments by way of open forum that folks want to make sure they share with the group at this point?
So, Scott, if I may, I shared a membership list with the people in this group, but I may not have, we may not have gone through and done introductions at the beginning. It might be good for us to do that.
No, you make a great point, and I meant to do that in a more informal way, and I think I got overwhelmed with the script I had to read and the roll call. So my apologies for not doing that. We will make sure we do a better job about that, or we can go through quickly now, but I also want to be sensitive to everybody's time.
And we lost a member. Ken Sanders had to drop off already as well. So maybe at the next time, and I'll go ahead and share the membership list with everybody again, so we all at least have that introduction.
That would be great. And my apologies to all of you for not giving everybody a chance to say a little bit about themselves. Just so I am clear, Denise, I have to read that script at every meeting?
Yes,
okay.
Sorry.
All right, well, we'll just consider that something we have to do, and we'll get that out of the way the first thing, and then we'll give everybody a chance to talk a little bit more about themselves once we've dispensed with the formality. Does that sound good?
Everybody's nodding their head, yes.
All right, awesome. Well, We are off, my friends. I appreciate all your time and insight and enthusiasm today. It's a great start. Looking forward to our next meeting and to our ongoing work, and looking forward to what's going to be a big collection of recommendations and ideas that we'll present to the board, but even more importantly, a really exciting and impactful and relevant commemoration here in Fairfax County in the coming years. So thank you. Christine, by way of conclusion, anything else you wanted to say on behalf of the secretary or yourself or the team there?
No, I think we're good to go. You got us in before 3 o'clock, so great job. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, and please extend our best to the supervisor. We look forward to being able to visit with him when he is able. And to everybody else, stay well, enjoy the weekend, all the best, and thank you.
Thank you all.
Lots of waving. Bye, everybody.
Stand.